The last time I stood in my parents' backyard, it was for a funeral. Not a real one, nobody died, at least not physically, but something inside me withered that afternoon. Something I hadn't even realized I still cared about. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately feel like a spare part in someone else's perfect machinery? That was me, standing there on that overly fertilized Kentucky bluegrass, surrounded by the polished versions of my siblings who somehow never broke a sweat while climbing life's golden staircase. Courtney, my older sister, in her fire engine red pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly research budget, was already holding court near the punch bowl. My brother Todd, freshly returned from another networking trip in Dubai, he sells crypto to rich idiots and calls it a career, was laughing that fake TV laugh that always made me want to scream into a pillow. They had flown in for the reunion, like royalty descending on a provincial village, expecting praise and reverence. And they got it too, with my mother bustling between guests, introducing them like prized racehorses. This is Courtney. She just got promoted to vice president of branding at a startup in San Francisco. And Todd, you know Todd, always traveling for work. Dubai, Singapore, London, he's global now. Then there was me, Amelia. No flashy job title, no expensive clothes, no spouse or kids or impressive new real estate to parade around. Just a plain gray cardigan, a worn leather notebook in my tote, and a brain full of things that apparently didn't count for much in this yard. The setup for the photo was what did it. The moment was so small and stupid in the grand scheme of things, but I swear to God, it ripped something open that had been quietly festering for years. They had one of those rented photo booths set up with a custom backdrop that read "The West's big, bold, and blessed." There was even a red carpet. I shit you not, a literal red carpet on the patio, leading up to a fake Hollywood-style backdrop, complete with sponsor logos. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. When they started lining up for the legacy photo, that's when it happened. I was standing beside my cousin Josh, who I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral, and I heard him snort under his breath. "Let's do one with just the winners," he said, loud enough for me to hear, but pretending like it was a joke meant for someone else. My Aunt Linda, always quick to twist the knife with a smile, added, "No offense, honey. We just want the ones who made it. We'll do a big group one after, okay?" She squeezed my arm like that made it better, like she was offering me a consolation prize. Like a pity hug could undo the slap of those words. No one said anything. No one pushed back. Not even my mother, who just smiled tight-lipped and adjusted Courtney's collar like it was the most important task in the world. I stood there, feeling the heat rise in my chest, a raw mix of rage and humiliation coiling in my gut. I didn't say a damn thing. Didn't cause a scene. Didn't scream or cry or demand they include me. I just stepped back, nodded once, and watched them pose like they were shooting a magazine cover for America's Favorite Family. And let me tell you something, that silence, that moment where I swallowed every angry word bubbling inside me, that wasn't weakness. That was power held on a leash. That was me bottling the storm because I had something none of them knew about. Something bigger than that backyard, bigger than their careers or bank accounts or filtered Instagram stories. Something they had dismissed as nerdy or obscure for years. While they were chasing followers and flashy job titles, I was chasing something real. I was chasing answers. And 3 days ago, I found one that changed everything. But they didn't know that yet. All they saw was the same quiet Amelia who always brought books to family parties, who didn't drink much, who worked at some science place that they never bothered to understand. They didn't know that my team and I had just published a breakthrough study on neural regeneration, real, tested results that could pave the way for reversing early-stage Alzheimer's. They didn't know that the International Life Sciences Council had named me one of the 3 finalists for their Global Impact Prize. And they sure as hell didn't know that I had a plane ticket in my bag for New York, where the award would be announced live, worldwide, less than 12 hours from now. I left the backyard before they even noticed I was gone. No one followed. No one texted. I slipped out the side gate, got into my beat-up Corolla, and drove down the gravel road with my windows rolled down and the night air cutting clean through the silence in my chest. The stars above me didn't care that I'd been left out of a picture. But they also didn't know I was about to be in a very different kind of spotlight. And still, part of me ached. Not because I wasn't in that photo, but because I'd spent 35 years trying to earn a place in it. Trying to matter to people who define success by shiny shoes and LinkedIn headlines. I thought of my dad, who used to bring me scrap metal to take apart when I was 10, who called me his little tinkerer, who hadn't spoken to me more than 5 words all afternoon. I thought of the quiet pride he used to show when I explained my lab work to him. It had faded like so many other things. When I got home, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, pulled up the email that confirmed my award finalist status, and reread the words I'd already memorized. Amelia West, PhD, honored for pioneering work in neuroregenerative science. Live announcement at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I took a deep breath, like I was about to jump off a cliff, and whispered to the empty room, "Let's see who they remember tomorrow." The rain came down so hard on the windshield it felt like the sky itself was trying to scrub away the afternoon, like even the heavens couldn't bear to leave a trace of what happened back there in that picture-perfect backyard. The wipers flailed with that loud, tired squeak that reminded me of every underfunded lab I'd ever worked in, every late night with broken equipment and cheap coffee. Every time I'd had to MacGyver a solution while my siblings were out in the world looking flawless on someone else's timeline. The headlights barely cut through the downpour, but I didn't mind driving slow. I didn't want to get home fast. I didn't want to be anywhere, really. There's a unique kind of ache when you realize your blood has weighed your worth on a scale you never agreed to stand on. It's not rejection from strangers that stings. It's the kind that comes from people who held you when you were small, from the ones who knew your laugh before it changed with age, from the voices that used to sing you to sleep, but now only speak in judgment or silence. That kind of rejection isn't a stab, it's a slow, steady carving out of everything soft inside you. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it might float away if I didn't. Thunder rolled in the distance, a low growl that felt like a warning. I don't know if I was angry or just numb, but something inside me had turned cold. Not cold like cruelty, but cold like clarity. Like, for the first time, I could finally see the damn picture without all the filters, without the fake smiles, the forced hugs, the "so proud of you, sweetie" bullshit that came with every holiday card and was hollow as a drum. I remembered being 8 years old and asking for a microscope instead of a Barbie. My mom's face had crinkled with that confused little smile, like I'd said something in another language. I remember Courtney getting a round of applause from the whole family at 15 when she got cast in some commercial for a local car dealership, while my blue ribbon at the regional science fair got exactly one half-hearted "good job" and a pat on the back before dinner was served. That pattern didn't change. They just got better at hiding their indifference behind glossy compliments and obligatory phone calls. Have you ever been left out by your own blood, like you were just extra furniture in their perfect little lives? What would you do if they suddenly needed you? If they came crawling back the moment you had something they wanted, would you let them in? Or would you finally lock the door and throw away the goddamn key? When I pulled into my driveway, the rain had slowed to a steady hiss, like the world was catching its breath. The porch light flickered above me, casting my shadow long across the wet pavement, and I stood there for a moment, keys in hand, heart pounding, like I was about to open the door to a different life. Maybe, in some small way, I was. Inside, the house smelled like old paper and eucalyptus, a weird combination I'd grown used to. The walls were lined with books, most of them annotated in the margins, because I never learned how to read without arguing. My cat, Schrödinger, yeah, I leaned into the stereotype, greeted me with a slow blink from his perch by the window. He didn't care about family photos or status updates. He cared that his food bowl was full and the thunder didn't last too long. I dropped my bag by the kitchen counter and opened my laptop, the screen lighting up the room with a cold blue glow. I didn't check social media. I didn't even open my messages. I went straight to my inbox, where the subject line I'd been avoiding all day was still sitting there like a loaded gun. Confirmed. Global award presentation at 8 a.m. tomorrow. No fanfare. No fireworks. Just a date, a time, and my name. I stared at it like it was a foreign object. This thing, this tiny email, carried the weight of years. Of notebooks filled with half-finished ideas. Of lab coats stained with coffee and failures. Of journal rejections that nearly broke me and breakthroughs that no one in my family ever asked about. I thought of the sleepless nights, the migraines, the doubt, the loneliness that comes with being a woman in a room full of men who think they're smarter than they are. I thought of every time I almost quit. And still, my mother once texted me, maybe if you dressed like Courtney and smiled more, they'd give you those grants. I still had that message. I never deleted it. I didn't respond, either. What the hell do you even say to that? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down on the couch and let the silence settle in like an old friend. My phone buzzed on the table, but I didn't pick it up. I knew who it would be, probably my mom, probably someone who suddenly remembered my name. Maybe even Todd, trying to make it sound like he'd always supported me, like he hadn't once told me I was wasting my brain on stuff no one understands. There was something both exhilarating and devastating about knowing that tomorrow morning, my face might be on screens across the world, my name spoken in places where it actually meant something. Not because I played the game or smiled for the cameras, but because I found something that could change lives. Something real. And yet, tonight, I was still the girl who got cropped out of the photo. The one no one wanted in the frame. The one who stood outside the glowing circle, just far enough away to not ruin the shot. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and whispered to the quiet, let's see how this plays out. Morning came with a kind of brightness that didn't feel natural, like the sky had been scrubbed clean overnight, just to show off. The storm from the night before had passed, but the air still smelled faintly of wet earth and leftover thunder. I didn't sleep much, maybe 3 hours, 4 at best. My brain wouldn't shut up, turning over conversations that never happened, lines I wished I'd said, people I wished I hadn't wasted my breath on. I got up before the alarm, poured myself the bitterest cup of coffee I could brew, and sat down on the edge of my worn-out couch like I was bracing for impact. It didn't take long. The first ping came at 6:40, just as the sun crept over the rooftops and made the kitchen tiles glow like something sacred. Then came another. And another. Before I even opened the damn browser, I knew what had happened. But seeing it spelled out across the headlines still felt like getting punched and kissed at the same time. American scientist wins International Life Sciences Prize, first woman in 20 years. Neural regeneration breakthrough earns Dr. Amelia West global recognition. Local lab, global impact. Kentucky woman shakes the world of science. I wasn't just in the news, I was the news. My inbox was a war zone of media requests, invitations, sponsorship offers, congratulations from names I hadn't seen in years. Colleges, nonprofits, think tanks, even a tech billionaire's assistant asking if I'd be open to a casual chat. But all of that was noise compared to the messages that came from the people who mattered the least and yet somehow still took up the most space in my head. Todd messaged first, like the cowardly opportunist he always was. Ames, let's talk. That thing last night was a joke. We didn't mean it. We're proud of you. Seriously. No punctuation, of course. Just like always. Lazy with his words, lazy with his effort. Then came Courtney, hiding her claws behind her polished nails. OMG, Amelia, this is insane. I had no idea you were working on something so major. I'm telling everyone you're my sister, LOL. Let's do a podcast together soon. Science meets lifestyle, you know? I stared at that one for a full minute before deleting it without even a blink. And then, right on cue, like she had been waiting for just the right moment to sound genuinely maternal, my mother. Sweetheart, we are all so proud of you. Come over for brunch today? We want to celebrate you. You deserve it. Brunch. Always brunch with her. As if waffles and mimosas could fix decades of being treated like an embarrassing footnote to the family legacy. I didn't respond. Not to any of them. I just kept sipping my coffee, letting the heat settle into my chest while the world exploded around me. Every screen, every channel, every blog I never read suddenly had my name on it. There was even a brief mention on Good Morning America, where they showed a blurry photo of me from a panel in DC last year, with some talking head calling me the quiet revolutionary. Quiet. They always say that about women like me. As if not screaming constantly is a weakness. As if keeping your head down and doing the work means you're invisible until you win something. And when you finally do, they act like they were rooting for you the whole damn time. I stood up, stretched the stiffness from my back, and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked exactly the same. The old oak tree still leaned slightly to the left like it had a secret. My neighbor's stupid inflatable flamingo was still floating around his pond like a plastic ghost. Nothing monumental. Nothing cinematic. But inside me, something had shifted. I wasn't different, but the way they saw me was. And that pissed me off more than anything. Because it meant they could have seen me all along. They just chose not to. The knock at the door came just after 9, sharp and deliberate. Not the kind of knock that says, "I'm here to sell you something," or "I'm just dropping by." It was a knock with weight behind it. I hadn't ordered anything, hadn't invited anyone. For a moment, I froze. I wasn't scared, just suddenly aware of how surreal it all felt. One day, I'm an invisible part of a family reunion, and the next, I'm someone worth knocking for. I opened the door slowly, already rehearsing the polite decline in my head, ready to tell a reporter or a neighbor that I wasn't in the mood. But it wasn't a stranger. It wasn't family either. Standing there, in a dark gray suit with a look on his face that I couldn't quite read, was Dr. Leonard Choi, chair of the council that had just given me the biggest scientific honor of my career. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and serious, "I know this is unexpected, but we need to talk. Off the record." And just like that, the story took another turn I hadn't seen coming. The weirdest part about going from invisible to important is not the attention itself, but the way people twist themselves into someone new the moment your name starts trending. The air around you shifts, like they've just remembered you were in the room all along, like they're trying to rewrite the past in real time and hope you don't notice the ink is still wet. I saw it starting the moment my inbox blew up, but by day 2, it was a full-blown circus, half admiration, half desperation, and not a single drop of sincerity anywhere to be found. By the time Dr. Choi left my house that morning, after a cryptic conversation about future implications and international interest that made my skin crawl with both pride and unease, the news cycle had fully latched onto me like a tick on a dog. I didn't like the way they framed it. Small-town genius, from nobody to Nobel-worthy, the Cinderella of science. That last one made me want to throw my laptop out the window. Cinderella? Really? As if cleaning out beakers in a crumbling university lab for a decade was somehow akin to waiting for Prince Charming to hand me a damn tiara. I hadn't been rescued. I had clawed my way through ignorance, dismissal, and underfunding with nothing but stubbornness and a broken-down centrifuge that whined like a dying animal. Still, the attention brought power, even if it was laced with performance. The mayor of our town, a guy named Randy Mays who used to dodge my grant proposals like they carried smallpox, sent me a sleek email inviting me to a private dinner to discuss bringing more science into the heart of the community. I remembered him laughing during a town hall when I tried to explain the neurological impact of agricultural toxins on local development rates. "Sounds like sci-fi mumbo-jumbo," he'd said, and the crowd had chuckled like I was a child with crayons instead of credentials. Now he wanted to wine and dine me? Please. I sent a vague, "We'll check my calendar," and moved on. Then there was the real kicker, Melissa Hanley, my high school tormentor, who once stuck gum in my hair during homeroom and told everyone I wore the same jeans twice in 1 week, sent me a direct message on Instagram like we were old college buddies. "Hey girl, so proud of you. Would love to collaborate sometime, maybe a joint live stream? I do beauty wellness content now, and your science would totally elevate the brand. The audacity made me laugh so hard I snorted coffee through my nose. Beauty wellness content. Unbelievable. I deleted the message and blocked her without even replying. But the most predictable piece of theater came from within the house of mirrors itself, my sister Courtney. Her email read like a marketing pitch wrapped in forced warmth. Hey Ames, can I still call you that? LOL, I've been thinking a lot about how to help you leverage this incredible moment. My PR rep is amazing. She worked with influencers during that climate change summit last year and got them a ton of traction. I can loop you in? Let me know. No mention of the backyard. No apology. No explanation. Just a new strategy for exposure, like she was offering to polish me up now that I had some value on the open market. I didn't reply. I couldn't even decide if I was angrier at the offer or the nerve it took to act like she was doing me a favor. Later that afternoon, I went to the grocery store because I still needed eggs and toilet paper like any normal human being who hadn't been vaulted into fame by a breakthrough in neuroscience. As soon as I walked in, I felt the shift. People looked at me longer. A kid stared like I was an astronaut. A woman I didn't know said, "Aren't you the girl from the news?" And when I nodded, she put a hand to her heart and whispered, "God bless you." The cashier, who had once told me I looked tired every single visit, now asked for a photo. I didn't smile. I didn't want to become a novelty in my own town. As I waited in line, I noticed two teenage boys pulling up my name on their phones, reading from some news article, one whispering, "She's from here," like the very idea challenged their reality. I didn't hate it. I just hated that it had taken this much, this ridiculous, headline-breaking achievement, for anyone to look twice. Back home, I tossed the eggs into the fridge and powered on my phone again, only to see something that made my jaw clench so tight I thought my molars might crack. A new notification at the top of my screen, family group chat created. The West winners, the heart emoji pushed it from pathetic to infuriating. Inside the chat were all the usual suspects: Courtney, Todd, my mom, Aunt Linda, even Josh. The same people who cut me out of the photo now posting celebratory gifs, hashtags, and family pride selfies like they'd been cheering from the sidelines the whole damn time. My mother wrote, "So blessed to call her ours," and attached a baby photo of me holding a beaker. Courtney followed with, "Always knew she was meant for big things." Todd, never one to be left out, chimed in, "Our genius sister." Next round's on me. I stared at the thread for a long time, thumbs hovering over the keyboard, running through every sharp reply I could send. I could remind them of every forgotten birthday, every time they laughed at my work, every dismissal disguised as a joke. But I didn't give them the satisfaction of a fight. Not today. I tapped to leave group. No warning. No explanation. Just out. Done. Then I grabbed my suitcase from the hall closet, zipped it shut with the calm precision of a woman who already knew what her next move was, and called a cab to the airport. There were invitations to accept in New York, panels to speak on in Geneva, and real conversations to be had in places that didn't ask me to smile more or crop myself smaller. As the cab pulled up outside, I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. Let them decorate their group chat with fake affection and filtered nostalgia. Let them pose for another photo with their arms around each other, pretending to include me now that my name meant something. I had a flight to catch. And the next picture I'd be in wouldn't need any filters at all. The green room smelled like hairspray, expensive coffee, and tension that had been steeping since sunrise. It was still early, barely 7 in the morning, but the production staff at Good Morning America moved like caffeinated ghosts, zipping past me in tailored blazers and noise-canceling headsets, each one juggling some minor crisis that somehow always ended in a nervous laugh and a tighter timeline. I sat in a soft leather chair that probably cost more than my old car and stared at the monitor showing a looping feed of the live broadcast from the stage, where two hosts were currently discussing celebrity divorces like it was nuclear diplomacy. The irony made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. I'd arrived in New York the night before, my body still half-tuned to Kentucky time, and barely slept in the hotel suite they'd comped me for the appearance. It had marble floors and a minibar filled with overpriced liquor I had no intention of touching. I'd stood by the window for hours, watching taxis crawl through the streets like veins under glass, and wondered what version of myself had landed in this surreal parallel timeline where people actually gave a damn what I had to say. And not just scientists or students or my overworked research team, but regular people, strangers, news anchors, editors, influencers who couldn't pronounce neurodegeneration, but now quoted me like they had degrees. The segment producer assigned to me was a woman named Elise, in her 30s maybe, dressed in neutral tones and gripping a tablet like it was her last defense against chaos. She'd been kind, in that efficient way TV people are kind when they need you to perform on cue, but still want you to feel like a human being. We'd run through the talking points twice that morning, most of them safe and shallow. How did it feel to win the award? What inspired your research? Tell us about your humble beginnings. The last one had made my stomach clench. Then, just before they pulled me toward the stage, Elise had leaned in close and whispered, "We think it would really resonate if you touched on the family angle. You know, the photo thing. It's raw. It's viral. People love that stuff. We're not saying make it ugly, just give them something personal. The clip will fly." I looked at her and blinked, wondering if she had any idea what it felt like to take a memory that stung like an open wound and smear it across national television for morning consumption. "Give them something personal," she'd said, like I was seasoning a steak. Like my pain was a condiment. Still, I nodded. I always nod, at first. They mic'd me up, powdered my face, and handed me a bottle of water I didn't touch. When they walked me to the set, I could see the city's skyline through the studio windows, glowing with that early morning golden hue that makes everything look like it matters more than it does. I took my seat under the lights and gave the host a practiced smile. He was charming in that way polished TV people are, warm, rehearsed, just human enough to sell sincerity. The first few questions rolled out smooth. I answered politely, gave them the sound bites they wanted, kept my posture upright, smiled just enough to not seem cold. Then came the pivot. The host tilted his head and asked, "So, Amelia, there's been some buzz about a family photo, something that happened just before you won the award. Do you want to share what that was like for you?" The silence in my chest felt like a held breath that had lasted 35 years. I could have lied. I could have softened it. I could have laughed it off like I've done 1,000 times before, made it seem like a harmless oversight or a misunderstanding wrapped in nostalgia. But something in me broke, or maybe something finally clicked into place. I looked into the camera and imagined every young woman who'd ever been told she wasn't enough because she didn't sparkle the right way. I imagined the ones who never got invited, who sat outside the frame, who built entire worlds while being ignored by the very people who claimed to love them. So I told the truth. Raw, unfiltered. "I was left out of the family photo," I said, voice steady but low. "They said they only wanted the ones who made it. That's what they told me. That I hadn't made it. And it wasn't just that one day, it was years of being the odd one out. The girl who brought books to barbecues. The one who wasn't shiny enough to matter. And I didn't fight it. I just walked away." The room went silent. The host blinked, unsure how to follow up. I leaned in slightly. And then, the next morning, I woke up to headlines. To awards. To the world suddenly remembering I existed. But I hadn't changed. I was still the same person they left out of the shot. The only difference was now they wanted a new picture, with me at the center. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just let the words hang there like fog. I knew what I'd done. I knew it would blow up. I didn't care. Within minutes of the segment airing, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree on fire. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, even old college friends who hadn't spoken to me in over a decade suddenly remembered I had a number. The clip was reposted by celebrities, educators, feminist bloggers, and a dozen advocacy groups. Comments poured in by the thousands, people saying they felt seen, felt heard, felt something they hadn't known how to put into words. I should have felt triumphant. But instead, I felt hollow, like I'd burned something sacred to keep others warm. Then the call came. Right in the middle of my fourth interview of the day, my phone rang and the producer waved at me to ignore it. But I glanced down at the screen anyway. It was Courtney. I didn't pick up. The host kept asking me about what resilience meant, like it was a brand, not a battle. The phone rang again. Same name. And this time, Elise mouthed, "Take it, if you need to." So I did. I stepped off camera, pressed answer, and brought the phone to my ear. "What do you want?" I said, flat. There was a pause. Then her voice, sharp and venom-laced, cut through the line. "You vindictive little witch," she spat. "You just couldn't let us be proud of you. You had to humiliate us. You had to make it about you." I didn't say anything for a long moment. Then I smiled, small, bitter. "It was about me," I said quietly. "You just never noticed until the world did." And I hung up. The internet has a way of taking something deeply personal and turning it into a gladiator arena before you even finish your morning coffee. By the time the network had uploaded the clip of my segment, my unscripted, unsweetened account of being cut from my family photo, it had already become a national debate. Comments flooded in faster than I could read them, and I stopped trying somewhere around the 3,000 mark. Some were kind and cathartic, from people who said they'd lived their entire lives on the edges of their own family's pictures. They wrote long, aching paragraphs about being the sibling who didn't fit, the child who chose a different road, the person no one remembered until they made the news or died. Others weren't so generous. They called me bitter, said I should have just accepted the apology, claimed I was ungrateful, that I'd embarrassed my own family on national television. One guy wrote that I sounded like another whiny woman who couldn't take a joke. Another accused me of weaponizing trauma for attention. They always think women are performing. Like our pain's just a show. Like truth is manipulation if it doesn't flatter them. I turned off notifications and tossed the phone on the hotel bed, letting it buzz itself into exhaustion while I sat by the window with a lukewarm mug of tea. I hadn't eaten all day. Couldn't bring myself to. My body was buzzing in that strange aftershock state, part adrenaline, part emptiness, like I'd finally dropped the weight I'd been carrying but hadn't figured out what to do with my hands. Around 4 in the afternoon, there was a knock on my door. Not the usual brisk knock from a staffer or producer, but slower, almost hesitant, like the person on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. I hesitated before answering. Then I opened the door. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in 6 years. Not since my postdoc graduation, when he left after the ceremony without a word, muttering something about needing to beat traffic. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, thinner in the face. He wore a jacket that didn't quite fit and held his baseball cap in his hands like it was the only thing keeping him from shaking apart. "Hi, Peanut," he said, his voice cracked in a way that stopped me cold. I didn't speak. I just stepped aside, and he walked in slowly like he was entering holy ground, his eyes darting around the hotel room as if it might bite him. "I saw the segment," he said, sitting stiffly on the edge of the bed. "Your mom sent it to me. She didn't think you'd talk about it like that." I guess none of us did." I stood across from him, arms crossed, heart pounding, 1,000 things I wanted to scream, all tangled in my throat. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. "I failed you, Amelia. I failed you as a father. I should have spoken up years ago. I should have said something when they left you out. But I didn't. I just stayed quiet. I didn't want to rock the boat. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that you were strong enough to handle it. But the truth is, I was just a coward. I didn't expect the tears. Not from him. He'd always been the stone in the river, quiet, solid, unmoving. But now his voice shook, his shoulders curled in on themselves, and he wept like a man who had finally been stripped of every excuse. For a moment, I saw the version of him I remembered from childhood, when he'd kneel by my science fair diorama and pretend to be amazed, when he used to let me take apart the toaster just to see how it worked. That man had disappeared somewhere in my teenage years, lost in the noise of my siblings' achievements and my mother's relentless obsession with social status. And now here he was, saying he was sorry. I sat down beside him, not close but not far, and for a long time, we just sat there in the heavy silence that only truth can create. I didn't forgive him, not fully, not yet. But something inside me softened. Maybe just a little. Maybe just enough. He stood after a while, wiped his face, and said, "You did good, Peanut. You really did. Don't let them spin this into something it's not. You told the truth. That takes guts." And then he left. Just like that. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed with the lights off, watching the clip of my speech on a loop. Not out of vanity. Not because I liked the sound of my voice, but because I kept wondering if I'd gone too far. If I'd burned the bridge so thoroughly that nothing would ever cross it again. I stared at the way my face looked when I said the words out loud, the pain that had simmered for decades finally boiling over in one 7-minute interview. And I asked myself the question I couldn't shake. Was I too harsh? But the truth is, no one ever asks if silence is too harsh. No one calls exclusion cruel when it comes with a smile and a maybe next time. But the moment you say what happened, the moment you hold up the mirror, suddenly you're the villain. Suddenly you're ungrateful. Suddenly you're the problem. I didn't know what the answer was. I just knew I wasn't going to apologize for surviving it. Just as I was about to close the laptop, another ping hit my inbox. I hadn't checked email since morning, and now the top message glowed like a flare in the dark. Subject: Your mother's statement to press. No greeting. No explanation. Just the line. Just those words. I didn't open it right away. I just sat there staring, my finger hovering above the trackpad, already knowing in my gut what it would be. And whatever it would change everything. Again. I don't know what I expected when I finally opened the email, but I do know I wasn't prepared for how fast the nausea hit when I started reading the words my mother had given to the press. It wasn't a personal message, not even a private apology tucked inside some passive-aggressive sentiment. It was a statement cold, curated, and completely soaked in self-preservation. Released to a mid-tier outlet that had reached out for a family perspective, it spread like cheap perfume, everywhere and impossible to ignore. "We're just a proud family," the quote began, "struggling to support our brilliant daughter in the best way we know how. It hasn't always been perfect, but our love has never wavered. Watching her achieve so much has been a blessing, and we're grateful the world is finally seeing what we've known all along." By the time I reached the word blessing, I was already gripping the edge of the desk, trying not to throw the laptop across the room. Love? Struggle? Gratitude? They hadn't supported me, they'd tolerated me, at best. And at worst, they'd made damn sure I always knew I didn't quite belong, didn't shine the right way, didn't fit the image they wanted to present to the world. And now that the world had turned its gaze toward me, they were tripping over themselves to rewrite the story and paint themselves as the patient saints who'd always believed in the awkward little girl with the microscope. It was all for image, for optics, for the hollow currency of public approval. It made me sick not just because of the lie, but because of how many people would read it and nod and smile and believe it. Because people want the easy story. The neat one. They want to believe the family came together in the end, that it was all just a misunderstanding, that there's no real fracture that can't be healed with a press release and a posed photo. But I knew better. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall for a long time, long enough for the light in the hotel room to change, for the shadows to stretch, and the buzz of the city to soften into evening. My phone lit up every few minutes with new messages, new offers, new invitations that didn't stop pouring in. Harvard wanted me to give a lecture. NASA asked if I'd be open to a private briefing. A TED Talk curator left a voicemail saying she'd rearrange the entire lineup just to get me a 20-minute slot in Vancouver next month. It should have felt like victory. It should have felt like arrival. But all I felt was tired. Because when the calls started coming in, I could already hear my family rehearsing what they'd say. How they'd act like they were part of the journey, like I'd gotten there because of them. They hadn't changed. They hadn't even paused to ask if I was okay. They didn't want me. They wanted my spotlight, my momentum, the shine of my name to rub off on theirs like some kind of social miracle cream. I remembered Courtney's voice on the phone, the venom in her words when she called me vindictive, and I thought about how quickly she flipped from anger to OMG proud sister in the group chat that I'd left without hesitation. I thought of my mom's text after the press release went out, just a quick note that said, "Hope you're not mad, sweetheart. We just want to support you the right way." What exactly was the right way? Was it erasing everything uncomfortable? Was it pretending history hadn't happened, smoothing it out into something palatable for strangers? Was it turning my trauma into a family brand? The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my hotel door, no postage, no name, just a handwritten note on thick cream paper that smelled like too much perfume and old intentions. Inside, it read, "You've been invited to speak at the Westbridge Community Gala, honoring hometown heroes. Your entire family will be front row." No signature. No RSVP. Just that. A neat little trap dressed up as an honor. I stared at the note and imagined the scene they were planning, me on a stage in the same town that once dismissed me as odd and forgettable, with my family sitting in the front row smiling for cameras, ready to claim their part in the story like they hadn't ghosted me for most of my adult life. I could picture it clearly: Courtney in a flawless outfit, Todd pretending to understand my research, my mom holding back tears with just enough restraint to make sure the mascara didn't run. And me? What the hell was I supposed to be in that scene? The prodigal daughter come home? The forgiven rebel? The reluctant star? My gut told me not to go. Every instinct screamed that this was another performance, another attempt to mold my truth into something they could live with, something the town could use for another round of community boosterism. But another part of me, maybe the same part that once kept trying to fit into the photo, wanted to walk in there and burn the whole thing down with the truth. Wanted to say, "You don't get to celebrate me now when you couldn't even look me in the eye before." But that's the thing about family. It makes everything more complicated. Even when you think you've cut the cord, the blood still hums like a phantom limb, twitching when the old names come calling. I looked at the envelope again, then set it aside without tearing it up. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. If I went, I wouldn't go quietly. The hall was full by the time I arrived, buzzing with the kind of polite, excited energy people reserve for events that let them dress up and feel important without actually doing anything. It was the Westbridge Community Gala, an annual town spectacle wrapped in glitter and borrowed lights, where local business owners got to shake hands with council members and everyone pretended we were all part of something noble. The venue hadn't changed in 20 years. Same folding chairs, same cheap wine, same string quartet playing Vivaldi like it meant something. I stepped through the back entrance, escorted by a young woman with a clipboard and a headset who kept calling me "Drive West" like I was someone sacred. She led me to a side room near the stage where a single mirror hung crookedly above a makeshift vanity, and the walls smelled like dust and hairspray. I sat down, stared at my reflection, and tried to remember when exactly I had started to feel so detached from it. Somewhere between the airport and the hotel, I think I had stopped being Amelia and started being a version of her sculpted by public attention and recycled press quotes. I could hear the crowd through the walls, laughter, chatter, the occasional clink of glasses, and underneath it, a steady undercurrent of anticipation. They were waiting for the final speaker. They were waiting for me. A volunteer popped in to check the mic clipped to my lapel, told me I'd be up in 5 minutes, then added with a smile that my family was beaming from the front row. I didn't smile back. I just nodded, adjusted the collar of my dress, and stood. When I stepped out onto the stage, the spotlight hit me like a physical thing, hot and isolating, a white circle cutting me off from the rest of the room. The applause started instantly, louder than I expected, full of that eager clapping people do when they think they're part of something worth clapping for. I looked out over the crowd, letting my eyes scan the faces, and there they were, my family. Front row, like they were supposed to be. My mother had tears in her eyes already, clutching a tissue like a weapon. Courtney was radiant as always, wearing a tight black dress and a smug half-smile that said, "We won." Todd looked bored but proud, the way he always did when he thought someone else's success might reflect well on him. And me? I stood there for a long moment, hands resting lightly on the podium, letting the silence stretch just enough to make people shift in their seats. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't smile. I didn't open with a joke. I just stood there, staring into the lights, and waited. After a while, the room quieted. Even the string quartet, now sitting off stage, leaned forward slightly, their bows still. Then I spoke. "Tonight," I said, slowly, deliberately, "I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to tell the truth." There was a ripple of confused smiles, polite laughter, as if they thought I was setting up some clever twist. I wasn't. I let the silence settle again before I continued. My voice was steady. Not angry. Not performative. Just clear. I was asked to come here and speak about success. To be a symbol of pride for this town. For this community. For my family. But the truth is, success didn't start here. It survived here. It endured despite what happened here. I paused again. My eyes didn't leave the front row. I was left out of a family photo because I didn't make it in the way they understood. I was dismissed. Forgotten. Told to be more like my siblings. I was treated like a background character in my own life. And only when I became useful to their story did they start to remember my name. A few people shifted in their chairs. Someone near the back let out a nervous cough. "I'm not here tonight to play the grateful daughter, the hometown hero, the sweet scientist who made everyone proud. I'm not interested in rewriting history to make everyone comfortable. I'm here to remind you that truth doesn't need to be convenient to be valid. It just needs to be said." The silence in the room thickened, like it was taking up physical space now. I saw my mother press her tissue harder into her lap. Courtney's smile was gone. Todd looked like he'd just remembered an urgent phone call. I stepped back from the podium. No matter how many awards they give me, no matter how loud the applause gets, I will never forget what it felt like to be invisible to the people who were supposed to see me first. And with that, I walked off the stage. No bow. No thank you. No wave to the crowd. Just the sound of my heels against the wooden floor as I made my way past the curtains, through the narrow hallway, back to the table where they'd placed my award, polished, heavy, gleaming like it meant something eternal. I picked it up, held it for a moment, then carried it with me across the room to where my family sat in stunned silence. Without a word, I placed the trophy in the center of their table. Then I turned and walked away. No cameras. No encore. No performance. Outside, the air was cool and still, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace, not because anything had been fixed, but because I had finally stopped pretending it could be. Funny how silence says more than applause ever will.